Welcome everybody to the very, very first instalment of the legends of the Australian dance music scene. And you can hear my dog in the background. She's a total nut job. And thank you for joining us today. Our very first guest, DJ Jwes. Now, my first introduction to you was a very, very nervous new DJ to the scene in Melbourne. I remember you were playing at a recovery, I believe, for Melbourne Cup. It could have been a liquid day party in a theatre. And I believe I was playing a recovery after the recovery as well. So I was very nervous, but I also knew of you from the, obviously, the Sydney scene. I'd been playing the Sydney scene a little bit earlier and knew of places like DCM and that, and you were a legend of that era. So I'd like to welcome you to the very first interview, and congratulations on, as you said, around about 33 years of DJing.
Yep. Thanks, Josh. Thank you for having me. Very, very excited to be the first one for this interview.
Yeah. Can you go back to where it all began? So for me, it was just collecting records. I really didn't have a scene back where I lived. What was it like for you? Did you grow up in Sydney?
I grew up in Sydney. I loved music. Oh, my God, probably from the time I was about 7 or 8. When you just love something, it was just anything. So it was radio until I bought my first what do you call it? It's a boombox these days, or, where you had your tape function. Yeah. So I'd actually record stuff off the radio and try and beat the DJ or the ads talking. So it was always that race.
This kids this day and age wouldn't know the struggle, would they?
Nah, and it was all going onto tape, and then the tape would break, and it would be, oh my God, devastation. So then I started doing tapes with my friends. I'd also started already buying vinyl by then. It was like everything from 7 inches to albums to, like very, very early days. Everything from Kiss albums, I think the Flowers before they were Ice House. So that's all on vinyl. That was kind of like I was buying that in my early teens.
Did you, like myself, like I really only relied on the commercial music and the free music that we had access to when we were younger. And that was what inspired you. I went to rock concerts. I loved InXS. I loved U2. I loved, all of these other things. And ABBA, my first concert was ABBA. And that was the things we had access to.
Yep.
When was it that you first started getting to know what dance clubs or discos, or what was your first contact with a DJ?
Old age of 14. I actually went to Jamison Street in Sydney, which was a famous club back then.
Wow.
And it was just so exciting. It was just all lights everywhere, loud music, and that would have been the days of Depeche Mode and everything.
Oh, stop it.
I know, right?
Mode, Erasure, Bronski Beat.
Yes. So, there I am, 14, and I reckon they had no idea how old I was. They had this guy buying us champagne. I was like, dude. Then from there, I actually got married very, very early and had my daughter. So I had her by the time I was 19. I'd still been collecting vinyl music. It's just my thing. Massive, big, like 10-piece stereo. I think back in the days, you had the amp, the preamp, the EQ, tripping down memory lane.
Took you 10 months to pay that thing off.
Yep, it did. I was also in another industry. So DJing isn't my first career. My first career was a hairdresser.
There you go.
And I got very, very bored very quickly. I ended up with my own business with my best friend. We ended up with 2 salons, and it still wasn't enough. I had a massive music collection, everything from acid house through to you name it. I started going to these underground clubs, just accidentally fell into them literally, and just fell in love with the music and started hunting that out. Then from there, I had this booming massive record collection. I was bored with my current career, and I was looking in the paper for something. I don't know what I was looking for, and I saw this ad for a mobile DJ. So, of course, I rang up, went in for an interview, dressed up in my outfits for them, which was, oh my God, super tight lycra, fishnets, buckled boots.
We're talking the early, are we talking 90s or 80s, Jewels?
We are talking 89 then, 1989. So I walk into this interview into this mobile DJ company, and, I'm seeing all these speakers everywhere. It's like, oh yeah, this is cool. So we start having a conversation. He just looked at me, says, we don't employ women.
Yeah.
When you kind of sit there, and it took me a moment. I went, what?
Yeah.
And he says, no, we don't employ women because they can't cut it. They can't carry the equipment. It's hard work, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and went, are you sure? I said, you're not even prepared to give me a chance. It's like, back then you didn't have discrimination. I couldn't sit there and go, that is discrimination, because it kind of didn't exist.
Because that's how I started. I started just DJing at friends' parties.
Yeah. And it kind of goes from there, doesn't it? It was like, I didn't even know what mixing was. Back then they taught us how to drop mix, and that was like, so you didn't have a gap between the music. Oh, my God.
Did you have belt drive turntables?
Yes.
We did too.
They were all over the shop. The pitch didn't work, and it was just like a wavering thing. Oh, my God, it would have been like 2 shoes in a dryer plus a train wreck at the same time.
It was pretty bad, wasn't it, back then?
I
was DJing at the Mars Bar very early on, and I'll be talking to Lexi Bradfield, the legend. I don't know if you know Lexi or not.
I do know Lexi. She's an amazing woman.
She's my next person to interview, because I'm very keen on not really honing in on this whole issue around the 80s about women not being able to be in the DJ box, but it is the reason for my interviewing with the girls to start with, because of how hard it was in the very humble beginnings of the late 80s, and even just getting a shot, but also working with crude equipment. And I'm yet to ask Lexi about, the legend has it that Lexi had to tape down her boobs and wear a mask at the Mars Bar so that she could come across as being male, because that was the same thing that she came across. Now, she's about in her 60s, I believe, and I'm just heading halfway there myself. So it has been difficult from then. And now what was your reaction after that? Did that drive you to move on to something? And
more so, I ended up understanding that my personality tends to thrive on people telling me I can't do something. No. So that for me was the challenge. And, after he said that and I processed it and I gave my response, I can't even remember. I would have gone along the lines of, you're not even prepared to give me a go, so that's pretty unfair. So, you've got no idea what I'm actually capable of. And I said, if you give me a go, I can tell you right now, I'll be your number one. And that is what happened. Yeah. So they actually made smaller speakers for me so I could carry them. They had them made.
That's awesome.
Yeah, because he made them in his warehouse. So he made them so I could actually pick them up, put them in my car.
Awesome.
And everything. So from there, after learning all of that, dropping into these underground clubs, which, oh my God, there was places like the Front, there was Patches back then, the Exchange. So I was kind of filtering into all of this and going, oh my God, this is different music. It's like I can't hear any gaps in it. And you're watching the crowd go nuts, and just music I hadn't heard. So I started going to Central Station Records, buying everything and anything. I was trying to get into a club. So I ended up in the commercial scene in a club called The Stain in Manly through a promoter who ended up being dodgy and not wanting to pay me. So we ended up in court, and oh my God.
Not a lot changed, did it?
No.
With promoters.
Look, at that point, I didn't have a problem getting with work because I just didn't see it. But it was like, it was afterwards. So there I was dressing how I wanted to dress. And I was a very flamboyant dresser. It was very girly. It was very long boots without even realising what that would cause until one day I did a party. It was for a footy club. It was in Cronulla. And the wife of one of the guys or the organisers come up and fair smacked me in the face because she reckons I was looking at her husband.
Cronulla, mate.
Cronulla,
footy, mate.
Yep.
We've all been there.
I kind of learnt to take money as I arrived, so I didn't wait till the end of the night. I always got paid. She's hit me. In that flash moment, I clenched my fist and I thought, and I was like, no, don't do it, don't do it. So I just walked away, turned the music off and went, party's over, people.
Yeah, good girl.
I just left.
Yeah.
So then I kind of thought, okay, there's a problem with how I look. Didn't really take much notice of it. I started asking for more work in clubs, ended up in a club called Jewelz in DY. Oh my God. That was a lot of fun, but I had so much learning to do. Then from there, a friend of a friend had some actual decks, like some Technics.
Wow.
So we ended up asking him if he can show me how they work. So he showed me and explained what pitch was and, how it all worked, where your first beat was. And that was from there where that frustration came in of, if a bloke can do this, I can do this. Why can't I get these beats to match? Why doesn't it sound like that?
I was doing it live with a studio audience. So it took me years like I knew, like you, I knew what the basics were, but I wasn't quite getting it. And reflecting back now, I don't know about you, Jewelz, but I listened to all the stuff I used to play, and I'm talking Mars bar music, anything from commercial 12-inch remixes of commercial songs to house to, you know, whatever. Some of it wasn't made for beat mixing. They never had the 32 count intro. They would just let fly in, or they'd have some spoken lyric, and I don't take it as hard now about the practicing, but it did take a friend of mine. Probably at Reflections nightclub, we used to have a chat. I said, look, if you can help me beat match, you know, what is it? Help me. And we'd have a competition and we'd have lined up shots. And I said, right, whoever fucks up the first mix has to do a shot. And then you have to go by the next round. And let me tell you, it was some messy nights, but learning and getting someone to give you just the first lot of pointers was going light bulb moment. And especially back then.
Having that little bit of help did help, but I still didn't get it until one day I kind of, my brain works in patterns and numbers really well, works really well with data. So I started looking at music and I bought a discotheque remix, and on it had 32 intro, 32, and I'm going, what's this 32? Right? So I started counting all my music. And that is literally how I got it. It was like, okay, so there's 4 beats to a bar. There's major changes on 16, 32. And it just kind of went from there. And I had these massive stickers on all my vinyl.
Me too.
Of everything, of all the breakdowns.
I think I've still got some here somewhere.
I've got some still as well.
I still do it. I still, these days especially, just put them in beat count and possibly a key, but I don't write the key because I don't know what the keys are, but I know when I can hear them, I put them in
Exactly. So from there, I ended up through another friend of a friend at Parramatta Leagues at a nightclub called Kicks. I was their first female DJ.
Awesome.
I was also their first
Do you know what that year
DJ.
was? Do you know what that year was?
1993.
Yep.
So it took me 3 years to get into a reasonable sized commercial club. The DJ there didn't like me because it was his residency. I was a girl and I was coming and I was playing dance music. And back then, dance music was along the lines of Janet Jackson, Madonna, Real McCoy, you know, all that sort of stuff. Scatman, you know.
Love it. Love it.
So I started playing all of this, and his first response was, "You're playing this shit." I went, "Yeah, look at your dance floor."
Exactly. Yeah.
So he started playing what he normally played, which was AC/DC. Oh my God, Jimmy Barnes, Metallica. And I almost sat in the corner and cried. I was like, how do I deal with this? So we ended up turning half the night into dance and half the night into his. Then it ended up being mostly dance and a section of rock.
Awesome. That's good.
Then from there,
and it's hard teaching older people when you're coming in on a generation that's ending to try and teach them something like that. Because I know that the struggle for me was being in the gay community first and bringing in these guys, you're going to play that techno shit tonight. And you're like, okay, I'll play all the girly stuff there. But as it gets later, I've got to give this stuff a go a bit later.
It takes a long time to teach and re-educate a room. And it takes consistency, a lot of patience as well as a DJ. You've got to read that room really well to understand what's going on and who's going to be your likely dance floor fillers. And, you know, you kind of work towards, you know, getting them on the floor first to get the rest of the crowd in. So you know how it works. You take that floor on whatever journey you can with whatever you have. That's going to work.
Let's talk about the journey from there. Like, obviously commercialism was a big part of us and underground scene. When was it your first sort of, and you did work a lot of the straight venues, and then DCM was one of those classic clubs in the 90s that was predominantly gay. But it wasn't an issue back then. You had Muscle Marys, you had drag queens, you had, you know, lots of gay men in one room. What was that transition like for you? What was the first contact with a gay club? And, you know,
I was a party goer on that dance floor from about 1989. So I knew that room back to front.
From the dance floor
I knew the
perspective.
DJs from a dance floor perspective, from watching and learning and watching the responses of the crowd, the party favors, how that worked, how the lighting worked with it. Before DCM, I actually got into Blackmarket, which was day club. That was my first underground residency. And that kind of happened quite by accident. I chucked a sickie from Kicks because I'd said I'd had food poisoning because I went to do a friend's birthday party at the Burdekin. All right. So I get to the Burdekin, I'm 3 tracks in, and there's a bomb scare. So this was around about 1995. That's when the bomb scares were really big, in the city.
And the fires, from my understanding too, because I've just watched the special on Luna Park about the fires in Sydney and how many clubs went down. We'll get onto that later.
We'll get onto that. So I've got tunes. I've got a night off now because I've chucked a sickie. I've already been paid for playing 2 tracks. We went past Blackmarket because I'd given in a couple of demos. Back then you gave in your tape demos in the hope that somebody might listen to it, and nobody ever did.
Yeah.
So I've rocked up and the manager was there, and I'll never forget him. He's the sweetest man. I've walked in, I said, "Oi, have you listened to my demo?" And he went, "Who are you?" And so I kind of said, I gave it a couple of demos, and I think he pretty much said, "No, I didn't." I went, "Okay, well, this is what's happened. I've got tunes in my car. I got nothing to do right now. Do you actually want to hear me play or not?"
Yeah.
And he went, "Okay, go get him. Off you go."
Oh, awesome.
And I just went,
"Holy
can I
shit.
swear on here?
Yeah, why not?"
I just went, "Oh, fuck, okay." As I'm walking to my car, I swear, I thought I was going to vomit.
Yeah. It's the worst, isn't it? Oh,
it was like, what have I just done?
Did you find that nervousness is what drives you though? Yeah.
I think if I'm not nervous before a gig, it means I don't really care. And you turn that nervous energy. I get sweaty palms. People will see me wipe my hands on my pants because they get sweaty. Yeah. So for me, I turn that nervous energy into energy I throw out.
Yeah.
So same sort of deal. So I got that, I did that. They had me on for about 2 or 3 hours as the crowd was coming in. I finished my set. He just come up to me, the manager, Dave, and he just went, "You want to start next week?"
Blackmarket, what a reputation venue too. What a great start.
I just looked at him and went, "Really?" He's like, "Yeah."
Nice.
So that was the start of that. And then I was there for quite a few months before DCM. I'd put in a few demos, hadn't succeeded. And I'd had a friend at that stage that was starting to drop my name everywhere, saying, "Yeah, she's, rocking Blackmarket." And I'll be honest, I was. It was a slightly different slant on everything. It was more about, getting that crowd roaring, keeping them going, because I'd know they'd been up all night. And then I get a phone call, a legendary phone call from Penny Clifford, the amazing woman. Here's the truth. I was actually on the toilet and I had an answering machine, right? So I had the volume up. She's on the answering machine. She's, "Oh, hi, Dal. It's Penny from DCM here." Yeah. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, "Okay, how fast can I get to this phone call?"
Pants down around your ankles.
"Look, we've got to spot this coming Friday. Look, don't sort of, get your hopes up too high. It's probably just going to be a one-off. Can you come in?" And I've just gone, holy shit.
Someone must have been in her ear about Blackmarket because you must have started that really good reputation. To give you a crack by now.
So they said, Fridays were really quiet at that particular point in time. I'm not sure why. So I grabbed every friend I could know. We went to the club and we had a ball. And then from there, she just went, "Oh, yeah, you're started. We're just going to rotate your shifts. You'll start early on a Saturday, blah, blah." And I've just gone, oh, fuck. Wow. So by that stage, I'd already started dressing quite androgynous. So people couldn't tell whether I was male, female, straight, or lesbian. They had no idea because they couldn't tell. And that's how I liked it.
Yeah,
because
that was the best way.
The guys would leave me alone. They wouldn't hit on me. The girls would leave me alone because I wasn't a threat. Because for me, being smacked in the face by a female was a constant thing, which this could happen again. And to be honest, I had a daughter and nobody knew about her.
Yeah.
Not because I was hiding and embarrassed, but it was more for keeping her safe.
And that was my impression of you as well when I met you, because I would say, "Do you think she is? Do you think she's not?" And you go, "It actually doesn't matter." But everyone was intrigued. And that's the mystery about it. Yeah. Because no one really knew. And you definitely did very well with doing that.
Jeans and T-shirts work wonders, except when I would frock up and people would just go, "Oh, my God." Yeah. Then from there, I ended up, Alex Taylor was my favourite DJ ever.
Love Alex.
Absolutely love that man. And he, for me, was my inspiration for many, many years. And to do a first CD with him was absolutely phenomenal.
I've still got that CD.
Yeah, we did that in my bedroom on a DAT recorder. So it was done live, and we just got in there and just did it and laughed and pissed ourselves laughing through it, and that was it. So that was that. And then it was through him and through that CD I ended up at Liquid in Melbourne as well. So I was hired by the Liquid crew. It was Nick and Beck. So I started playing down here, and that ended up being almost shipped down here every 3 weeks. So I'd be going from, at that stage, I was doing anything up to about 13 gigs a week. So it was a full-time job back then. I'd be doing probably DCM a Friday night, Blackmarket Saturday night morning, fly to Melbourne Saturday afternoon, work Saturday night, and sometimes fly back and do my gig in Blackmarket Sunday morning. So that would be like a normal weekend.
And we carried around 2 boxes of records on flights.
Yeah, back then they actually let you bring them into the inside the
craft.
Yes.
They never let me do that. You must have had friends on the side there.
20 kilos in each box. You know, it wasn't light after carrying those upstairs is bloody hard work. And, you know, DCM and places like the Exchange, you had flights of stairs you had to get up, and you had to take them with you. Oh, yeah. And Exchange had a ladder. Q
Club in Sydney had 3 levels, and they always had me up on the top level. 3, and the security wouldn't help you.
No.
No way. No. And some of these Melbourne venues are the same, right?
Yep. You know, so look, the struggle from being a female was more so being taken seriously. The rumours of the why you got the gigs, the judgment of, you know, let's see if she can actually, you know, hold a dance floor. Let's see if she can actually mix, and the scrutiny, and, you know, that was always there. But I think for me, I made it such a point to not be a threat to the male DJs that I became one of the boys. I swore like them all. I didn't drink more like them because I don't really drink. And for me, work is work and nothing ever mixed. I partied separately to my work, and my partying never came to work with me. If that makes sense. God, I'm trying to be really politically correct there.
No, I get it totally. And I think that one thing that back then, it was always hard to get your foot in the door. And like most of us, we have a story of literally fluking getting in, or an opportunity that came our way that they were desperate to put someone on, and you got in there and you blow them away. And I think back then we were, both of us and anyone that was around that scene, Alex and everybody, we seemed to be floating within the straight and gay community without, and there was a scene within a scene.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So you were very, very lucky around about that time to be hanging out with the gay boys and the straight boys, but also the scene. So when we're talking music selection, I remember DCM and Liquid, and even though there was a lot of gay men and women there, they seemed to be getting into the harder edge stuff, which was nice, because back in the early 80s when we were playing, it was very house driven, very emotional. It was very, you know, black female divas, pianos, a lot of Italio house.
Yep.
But there was that transition with, I guess, the drug culture as well, where people started, I guess, not caring who they were partying with, but their music was now being driven by harder beats, harder bass, more sort of woo. What was your transition from your sort of acid house and commercial days? Who were your most of the influences back then for the music that you were playing at places like DCM? Can you remember? Because like a lot of the tracks, I actually have to go back sometimes. A lot of them never really became commercial hits. So.
No, most of them didn't. Back then, the dance floors were very accepting of new music, and they loved it because it wasn't something that you could Google. It wasn't something you could go on YouTube. So they would come to a club to hear new music, and we fed that. If it was new, we were on it. I broke so many tracks in the club and just watched either the dance floor needing to be educated with it, or the dance floor absolutely loving it from the first beat. And as you say, as the drug culture changes, the choice of drug changes, so does the music, but also music production improved. So we had people that were getting more educated with production. Their software was getting better. So they were taking more time, and music became more of an emotional journey rather than a hands up in the air handbag diva. So it became about, you know, where can you take these people on this journey with this music, whether it had words or not? And most of mine did not. as that progressed. I went from, all playing all the big things like Homeboy, Hippie, Funky Dread, through to, through to, the Italian house, then through to your Agnelli and Nelsons, then through to, all of that era. And for me, it was music. I couldn't box myself because I loved it all. I found a way to actually get it all in there and make it work.
The media label was massive for me. Italian house, anything that was coming through Central Station, Italy, Europe, things like that. And I guess were both at the same time frame, but didn't really know of each other in different states. And the thing I loved about, I was immediately going to fall into trance as you did, because it was emotional and it was music that was made for the journey. And a lot of those DJs back then, I remember Melbourne was very progressive. They were very seriously progressive with your Anthony Pappas and your Phil Kays and all of those sort of guys. And they were always quite funny when I went shopping in Melbourne to pick up the biggest trance cracks, because they'd just load me with them because they weren't interested. Like, here you go, Jewelz is playing this and this person's playing that and we're playing this, and there you go. So that progression into trance back then, I feel was at the time in the mid-90s when you were playing around DCM days and the gay community, it was very liberating for all sorts of people. Like, you would have had all your friends going in there mixing with all of those people, and it wasn't an issue. There was no separatism. There was no
there wasn't
judgment. There was just a whole bunch of people going, oh my God, this freaking music. You've got to come to this club. This chick's going off. And there was no real issues with it, was it? We're very lucky.
You would have everything from what you'd call your bogan or your Westie, through to your high class ladies, through to your amazing drag queens, through to your queens, through to your everyday person. It was all in one room and everybody got along.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what is so different back then. Whereas now, if you tend to go to a certain style of club, it's one certain style of people. So it's very, very different.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Melbourne scene as well. There's, big clubs that you played at, like Room680. That's just got such a reputation.
Yeah.
There was all the day clubs, which, it was great for DJs such as yourself to finish work on a Saturday and fly straight out and come straight into and have a set at 2:00 in the afternoon.
Yep. I was doing that from about 1997 through to early 2000. The Melbourne gigs from Sydney, and then moved here in 2001.
Yeah.
And that opportunity was, I sort of saw Sydney going where I didn't want to go musically and club-wise. It was stepping back into commercial territory for me.
Yep.
Especially the clubs that I was used to playing. So it was either like change into a new scene and try and break in. I fell in love with Melbourne when I first came here, and I'd said I'm going to move here, and I did. The opportunity came up to work in the record store One Stop in Paran.
I remember that. Yep. Used to visit you regularly.
Yep. I actually took that opportunity to come in as a part-time employee, and the manager at the time, as soon as he found out I was coming, he left. He left the day before I arrived, so left me in the manager's role.
Perfect.
Which suited me fine. So from there, I had to change everything in the way we were ordering vinyl in there, because the previous guys running it were ordering very specific, really sort of like really deep, minimal, progressive. So they had this thriving little hard trance scene that had no music.
Yep.
None.
I noticed that. I noticed when I was doing my shopping, every time I'd come and play in Melbourne, it was very difficult to find one of you. I remember One Stop in particular started stocking stuff when you were there that was really up my alley. Finding stuff in the other stores on the strip, it was really difficult to find anything outside of progressive.
So I'm not sure if they actually really understood the background of the harder sort of like trance scene, or whether they just had no interest in it.
Yeah.
But to sort of come down and walk into a store that was completely empty, and pretty much they were going under. They weren't making enough to even pay the rent.
Yep.
So for the first few months, I sort of like kicked back. Nobody really understood who I was. There wasn't that sort of, she's from Liquid. Until this moment where people started realizing, hang on, she's actually been playing at some point, and, she's not playing here yet. It took me a couple of months to get anywhere. The guys from Frantic started coming in.
Awesome.
So I started talking to them, and they're awesome, Eggers and Kane, and, we just got along like a house on fire. I used to deck out the shop for them and literally cut out their Frantic posters and stick it on the window to make patterns, because I had nothing else to do. Right. So from there,
this is being a record store at that point in time, especially because that really took you into let's talk about Base Station and all those harder edge. You just went harder and harder, and the boys went harder and harder, and then all this new scene within a scene had started from your inclusion to the record store in Melbourne.
Well, my taste did factor quite a lot into it, and I was getting harder and harder and harder because that was coming in new, and I was going, "Ooh, this is ballsy. This has got some balls, yeah. Watch the dance floor on this."
Yeah.
So then, it was Jason Midrow was coming in because he was always been there. The guy, he was Sound of Now, Base Station, everything.
Yeah.
And I was giving him his tunes, and he's kind of just like one day just looked at me and he went, "Do you play? Do you DJ?" I went, "Yeah." And he says, "Where have you played?" I went, "Well, in Melbourne, Liquid." And he went, "Oh, fuck, you're Liquid Jewelz." And I've gone, yeah. And he says, "You want to come down and have a look at my club?"
Awesome. The Midrow boys.
The Midrow boys. So I went there one night and didn't know what to expect. So that was my first venture into the rave scene. So Sydney didn't have a rave scene as such. And I'm looking, oh my God, I'm looking at these people with fluffies and gaiters and really big white pants and hoodies. And, you know, it was the candy on and their hats and the Melbourne shuffle.
And the whistles.
And I'm just like, the fuck, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So ended up getting a residency there.
Awesome.
And it just kind of went from there. So it was like, you know, another CD at DCM. So there was 2 CDs. There was also an underage CD called Crush, which I was playing at in Sydney, then ended up with a CD with Base Station and Sound of Now.
Yeah.
And that's where I started tipping into the like techno sounds. And sort of for me, music is always changing. And it changes with me as well. I start seeking things that suit my personality and where my headspace is because music talks. And I can't play what doesn't speak to me. If I don't have a tune and I think, fuck, this is shit hot, I love this.
Yeah.
I won't play it.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't speak to me. I'm not going to present it well.
Yeah. I just totally skipped the electro scene because I wasn't into electro. I could never understand it. I kind of skipped it completely. And during your career, as you go, there's always, you know, new styles coming in, and whether or not, like you said, if it doesn't speak to you, then don't play it. You know, don't think you can play it because it's not going to come across on the dance floor. And that comes from being someone, I was always on the dance floor, and you too, like you were on the dance floor, you knew from a perspective of what people want, and you knew which DJs were speaking to you.
Yeah.
You know? And that's how it was. So the hard scene was amazing in Melbourne. You had, you know, people like Amber Savage, you had Baxter, you had the Midrow boys, you had, I could list a ton of them, the Base Station boys. I've actually got a photo, which I'll bring up shortly, of the last time I played in Base Station was with you.
That would have been when we had Compound there and Chaos.
Yes.
Tristan Mason would have still been there as well.
Yeah.
I remember that.
God bless his soul.
Yeah.
Tristan Mason is a very good friend of my sister, and he played in their metal band.
Oh, right.
And he went to Prague with them to play in Truth Corroded.
Oh, wow.
Okay, Jewelz. So I'm going to pull up a photo here that was taken at the last time I think we played together.
Yeah, that's
this. Can you remember what year this was?
That would have probably been around about 2003 or 4.
Yeah. And who's the people in the photo? There's you and me in the middle. Who are these?
Yep. So on the far left, I cannot remember who that is. The one next to him, that is Dom Tonka.
Yep.
And that's JoSH in the middle.
Yep.
Then me. Then there's Compound, so Nick Compound.
Yes.
And T2, which is Trent.
Yes. And it looks like we were still playing the vinyls, and I believe that was the last Base Station.
Oh,
it was a celebration of some kind like that.
It was a main room event. So they used to have 2 rooms. So one room was actually 3 rooms. They'd have the smaller rooms out the back of the palace, and then they'd have the big events.
Of course.
In the main room. So that was a main room event.
And that's at the palace, yeah?
Yes.
There you go.
So that would have been a main room event. And they had those probably every few months, but the weekly was in the smaller rooms in the back of the palace.
Yep. Let's talk about those years. You know, again, it was a very, very different scene to what we'd been used to, wasn't it, really?
Very much so. Things were morphing quite a lot. So very, very different.
Yeah.
I loved this scene because it was also so accepting. They were loving new music. It was a lot of fun.
Yep.
A lot of fun.
Yep. We actually got to the point where there was a lot of younger people coming up the ranks, and the hard scene for Base Station was very young, and the gay scene didn't really take off with hard music, did it? It was very Tony DeVitt in England very early, but the gay scene sort of didn't follow suit. So it must have been a different transition for you to go into that audience.
I think that transition started happening in Sydney when everything started changing on Oxford Street as well. Yeah. So it did become a lot more hetero, is probably the correct word.
Probably the right term, yes.
Yes. It's got to be careful these days, don't we?
Yes, we do. We've got to be careful what we say. Yes.
So I was getting quite used to playing to a non-mixed crowd.
Yep.
And coming to Sydney, I had to re-educate myself a little bit in regards to, the dancing styles and, what made that floor rock. And seeing people dancing on talcum powder, I was like, whoa, okay.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
Understanding that dancing was a craft here. It was an art.
Yep.
So it's an expression for them. To dance like that on a floor. So it was also trying to sort of like make sure that they got that experience for themselves, and helping them express themselves. Yep. And the music was almost like anything goes. Pretty much anything goes.
Yep. And I think that one of the things that I enjoyed most of is that anything goes sort of attitude, because really, for me, being a gay, obviously I'm gay, she, her, whatever you want to say, but it was hard for me to infiltrate the straight community, I guess more so after, but getting them to get over the fact, because all of you girls were semi-feminine looking, Baxter, Amber Savage. It was a time around a lot of the feminine girls were coming in through the ranks and playing very, very hard music. So for me, it was very difficult to get acceptance from that audience. But I think, again, the drug culture helped us because they seemed to have that real attitude where they didn't really care as long as they were dancing to hard music,
Pretty much. It is a lot more accepting. I found I dropped the whole androgynous look probably around about 2001, 2002 and started really girling it up because I was older. I felt safer. I wasn't going to get smacked in the face by someone.
Yeah.
And I felt safe in the clubs as well. There was no violence. I mean, I cannot remember a fight in any of the clubs in Melbourne, whereas Sydney did have that. We had fights there, whereas it wasn't here, and I felt comfortable to express myself. I wore really short skirts again. I wore really long boots again, and I had it was like the push-up bras and, the full makeup, and it was like an experience for me to kind of go, well, I actually really like looking like this, and it works because it makes the women realize, oh my God, she's female, I can do this too.
She's going off.
But it's like, I can do this too and be a female. Yeah.
And I think that was the best part of that era, going from the 90s into the 2000s was spectacular, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was really so much fun. And I found that I left the gay community in around about 1995 and kind of hit the mainstream of gay community like ARC and Sydney and stuff in 1999. But during that time, we were playing the underground banging scene. I really wasn't even playing anywhere in any gay community except for Melbourne. And then I'd play a gay club and then I'd play a straight club. And same in Sydney, I'd play a gay club and then go off to Icebox.
Yeah.
And can you talk to me about the hard clubs in Sydney? Because I know you played a few of those as well.
Oh, gosh.
I played the Icebox, and I think there was the Greenwood in the chapel with the Ferris boys and Baxter and Jumping Jack. There was Nick Fish. There was who else was there? You'd be able to name a few, wouldn't you?
They were kind of their own scene as well.
Weren't they?
So they were their own scene and we had our own scene, and every now and then those paths would merge and then sort of go again. And and I think I started experimenting with playing a little bit more progressive because I loved that as well, and I still love that to this day, and I'm tipping more into that edge again. So in the Icebox, playing a lot more progressive, and you're playing to a different audience who potentially don't know your background, so that expectation of banging out a hard tune isn't there.
Yeah.
So that was actually really good. Same as doing like this massive festival. I can't remember the name of it. And it was sort of like playing progressive music there. So I had people, you know, wanting to give me a go into a new sound, even though they knew my background.
Yep.
So they were kind of like taking that risk. It was about taking risks back then as well.
Yeah.
So the banging scene, I guess we created our own banging scene in Sydney.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we bring that banging scene to Melbourne.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so we transferred it down, and it was hard house. Frantic had their hard house. That was very, very strictly hard house, which is very different to the hard banging trance.
That's correct, yep.
So then it kind of like became a merge of that as well. So it's just been a fascinating thing to watch the scenes slightly merge, and genres within genres start merging and creating their own genre. And then, you know, you had psytrance in the background the whole time, and, you know, that sort of started filtering into the mainstream and into some of our clubs that we started working. So I started introducing what would be acceptable, and acceptable became normal.
Yeah.
And then I started really dipping right into psytrance as well. Like, I mean, hard. It was called galloping. And
did you ever get called hardcore?
No, it was just like, fuck you, hard. And it's like, what? What do you mean? I don't understand. And then you'd have people coming up going, can you go harder? And I'd go, what? What do you mean?
Yeah.
And their version of harder was like something that they knew.
Yeah. Did you enjoy the hard scene a lot? Like,
look, I did. I have fun in every single scene. I don't play in a scene unless I have fun. For me, DJing is an absolute passion, and I do it because I love it. I don't do it because I have to. Yeah. It's not something you can do because you feel you have to, because you need the money or anything, because it is hard to make money in the scene now. Back in the day, if you were having fun and getting gigs, you were making money.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, even now, if I'm not going to enjoy a gig, I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah. So let's talk about the progression into now. Now, you've just recently, I saw a post that you put up, and I happened to be on that day that you went live with an announcement. I don't know about you, but I found it really difficult between, do you feel too old to be playing to young audiences, and do the young audiences are really not interested us in what they call their dinosaurs? We live in a time at the moment, as we're aging, kids are progressing into EDM and all sorts of fancy stuff, and there's all that big vinyl against this, and USBs and sync buttons and all this sort of stuff. Now, you're stepping back behind the wheels of an event coming up, and I'm really excited for you, especially because I know how that feels to be able to start again. How long has it been since you've played a decent gig that you remember?
I was playing in Sydney probably once or twice a year over the past few years.
Awesome.
I took a break when my mum got breast cancer, probably about 7 years ago, because I was travelling quite a lot to Perth to help her with that. And that's my first introduction to cancer. Mm-hmm. And then I was diagnosed this year as well. Mm-hmm. And in between there, I'd set up another business. You know, I own a gym. I've got a team that work for me, all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of like been getting in the way. And if I can't give myself 100% to my DJ gigs, I probably just hold back, which is what I've been doing. Mm-hmm. And having cancer and being diagnosed and going through chemo and everything over the past 6 months has made me realise how much I absolutely love DJing. I'm not prepared to retire, as people have assumed. It was just taking a step back.
Yep.
So for me, I don't have those blinkers where it's a younger audience, I'm too old. Music is ageless. And if you have a performer that can perform and deliver an experience and a journey, it doesn't matter whether they're 20 years old or 80 years old. It doesn't matter, because the dance floor, the audience, they've got blinkers. Most of them aren't going to even see 10 foot in front of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're just going to see the lights. They're going to hear the music. And, you know, I don't care if they don't know who I am.
That's correct.
It is delivering that experience. And I don't care what medium I use, whether it's vinyl, whether it's USB, CD, you know, I just don't use things like Tractor or Serato or anything like that. Yes, I use USB. Yes, I manually mix.
Yeah.
Because I love that live element. I love being able to grab that pitch and move it so it phases. And, you know, you can just do a lot more with it. It's a lot more for me. It's that challenge. It's mentally stimulating for me. And when I nail that mix, my ass wiggles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
You
And
know,
that's touche. I'm glad you say that, because, you know, there's a lot of people with opinions these days, and, you know, we just want to get down to the nitty gritty. We just want to make someone go off. And can you explain to me your style? How much has it changed? Like, what's in store for the gig? You know, what have you got planned?
I think the connection between any sound I play is it's a really sort of like big bass line. For me, I love big bass lines. They're fat, they're chunky. And that's always been connecting, regardless whether it's been trance, whether it's been techno, whether it's been progressive or psy. There is this underlying bass line which has a very slight funk edge to it.
Yeah.
I call it a swing. And that
bass swing.
It floats my boat, you know, you know, what I'll probably be playing is a little bit of a mix of progressive into sort of like progressive psy into, I'm just going to see where it goes. I've got, you know, 3 months to sort of like have a look at my collection, what I want to actually do. What I would choose for an outdoor festival is very different from what I choose for a club.
Yeah.
Because you've got the outdoor elements and you want to create that experience. So I'll be selecting very specific tunes to deliver that sort of experience. And it's going to be like, it will be a journey. And that's what I love about it. I want to start at one point and take them to somewhere else.
Yeah. Yeah. And hopefully they'll just be open to that. And, you know, the promoters are obviously very, very twigged into what you do. How did you get the gig?
Just got asked. Promoters have been asking me now for quite a few years. They've all just gone, hey, can you come and do a gig? And I'd be like, look, I can't. I've got work commitments. I can't. I'm in Perth with my mum. And now I kept the cancer diagnosis reasonably quiet. And a couple of people said, hey, you know, do you want to come do a gig? And I said, look, you know, I've got cancer. I'll be up front. So I'm not doing any gigs right now. I need to get over this. And they've just gone, oh, shit, hey. And then I was asked by Tiggs for ESO.
Awesome.
The big festival coming up, Esoteric. And I said, look, Tiggs, I've got cancer right now. Can I go tentative? I reckon I'll be okay. It's in March. Yeah, everything will be done by then. Surgery's over. I should possibly have some hair by then. I've got chemo curls under here, so I've still got some of my hair, but the chemo curls are there and I'm just like, straightening it. So I'll probably have really short hair by then. So we'll see how it goes. But the promoters that I've worked with over the past have been extremely amazing. They keep asking, and I've been feeling so bad saying, no, I can't. Because once again, I don't want to deliver a shit performance. For me, that would just destroy me emotionally and mentally, because I want to be able to perform really well rather than half-assed. Yeah.
Always use your full ass.
Yeah.
That's my
wiggle that butt. Yeah.
Jewelz, it's been an amazing journey for you, and congratulations on everything that you've done in the past and flying that banner for the girls. It's I don't know about you, but I feel like so honoured to be able to have this meeting with you today, but also get to know you a little bit more about your history and understand how hard it was, but how hard you've worked to get where you are today. And congratulations on getting through your cancer diagnosis and everything, and your attitude towards what you do and your music.
Thank you so much, Josh. It's actually been an honour, because I don't know if you remember, you booked me for one of your gigs in Adelaide.
I did.
And it was a church.
That's correct.
Yes.
I do believe it may have been a sleazeball at St. Paul's. And you know what? So many of those years we've come past each other, and I really, really respect you a lot. And thank you for all the years and the hard work you put in and the great music that you flew the banner for.
Thank you, Josh. You know what? It's us women that have opened up the doors.
That's correct.
Look, it hasn't been easy, but God, it's been fun.
But what's your advice to any young girl now? I mean, you know, it is
be persistent. Don't take a no for an answer. Keep at it. Grow some balls, because you're going to need them. Have a thick skin.
I used to say that to people, strap on your balls, ladies, it's going to be a ride.
It's a rough ride. It's late hours. It is knocking on doors. It is getting rejection. It is getting hit on. It is being asked for favors, which it is hearing rumors about yourself that aren't true. There's a lot going on.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, they were the hardest ones, yeah.
So it is have a thick skin.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't think emotionally.
No, and be professional. When you're working, you're working.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Touche, hooray. Thank you so much, and I look forward to maybe doing a follow-up interview after.
Absolutely.
Is it the Esoteric Festival? When
Esoteric. That is in March, the 8th to the 14th.
2024, yeah?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So if you guys get this information before March, what's the date?
Oh my God, I think from the 8th to the 12th.
Look. It's big. Is it a 3-dayer, is it?
It's a 4-dayer.
Whoa, they'd need a lot of people on board for that one.
It's a big DJ lineup.
Yeah, really? Can you tell me who's the lineup?
Oh gosh. They've just announced over 100 locals as second round. They've got a load of internationals, and I think there's another announcement or two coming. So we're talking hundreds. Yeah, hundreds of DJs of all sorts of sound, every single subgenre, everything.
And where's it being held?
It is about 4 hours out of Melbourne.
In the sticks.
It is a bush. So,
before we finish this interview, and then at some point during this week, if you could throw me a flyer your way, I'll just pop it on the end there for you. But again, thanks so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. And
thanks, Josh.
For being my first victim.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We shall.